You walk into a room and forget why you came in. A name vanishes the second someone says it. A book you finished last month is already a fog. You know you liked it, but the argument, the details, the part that moved you, gone. You reach for your phone to remember a number you've dialed 100 times. You've been told this is just how memory works, that it fades a little more each year, and there's nothing to be done but write things down and let the device hold the rest. But 2,500 years ago, people held entire books in their heads. Epics, word for word. Speeches that ran for hours, delivered without a single note. And the strangest part isn't that they could do it. It's that the thing letting them do it is still sitting inside your skull right now, fully intact, exactly as capable as it was in theirs. You were never given a bad memory. You were given an untrained one. And the training was lost. It starts with a man walking out of a room, seconds before that room kills everyone inside it. The story comes down to us through Cicero, the Roman, writing 4 centuries after it supposedly happened. So treat it as legend with something true buried inside. Around 500 BC, a Greek poet named Simonides was hired to perform at a banquet. A nobleman named Scopas had thrown a feast in his own honor, and Simonides stood and recited a poem of praise. Then he sat, and the hall filled with eating and noise and the warmth of 100 bodies in one room. A message came. 2 young men were outside, asking for him by name. Simonides rose and stepped out into the night. There was no one there. And in the few seconds he stood in the empty dark, looking for men who weren't there, the roof of the banquet hall collapsed behind him. Everyone inside was killed. The stone came down so completely that when the families arrived, they couldn't find their dead. The bodies were crushed past recognition, past telling a father from a stranger. And then Simonides did something that should have been impossible. He closed his eyes and walked back into the room in his mind. He saw the table. He saw where every guest had been sitting, this man at the head, that woman to his left, the merchant by the door. He moved through the room in his memory, seat by seat, and named every single body by the place it had held. Every one, from nothing but the picture of where they had been. Standing in the ruins, Simonides understood what he'd done. His memory hadn't stored a list of names, it had stored a place, and the place had held the names for him. The Greeks called it the method of Loci. Loci, their word for places. Later it got a better name, the memory palace. And this is the part that should stop you. It didn't stay a poet's trick. For the next 2,000 years, the memory palace was standard equipment. Cicero taught it. Quintilian, who trained the orators of Rome, taught it. Every educated person learned to build rooms in their mind, because in the world this technique sat at the center of, a trained memory wasn't a gift. It was a skill, like reading. So if it was this central for this long, how does walking through an imaginary room let you hold 1,000 things at once? Try it with me. Right now, with something you'd never normally hold. A short list. A candle. A wolf. A key. An apple. A drum. Don't repeat the words. Instead, take a place you know better than anywhere on earth, your home. Stand at your front door in your mind. On the doormat, a candle is burning. Not the idea of one. See it, the flame bending, wax pooling on the mat. Step inside. In the hallway, a wolf stands, head low, watching you. You can smell it. Into the kitchen. A giant key lies across the counter, too big to lift, cold and bright. On the table, a single apple, almost glowing. And in the next room, someone is beating a drum, and you feel it in your chest. Now walk the route. Front door, hallway, counter, table, drum. Candle. Wolf. Key. Apple. Drum. You didn't memorize that. You barely tried. You took a walk through a house you already knew, and the things were waiting where you left them. That's the whole secret, and it's almost insultingly simple. Your brain is bad at holding abstract lists, words and numbers floating free, but it is extraordinary at holding places. You can picture your childhood home decades later, every corner, without effort. The part of your mind built to map space never decayed, because for your ancestors, forgetting the path back to water meant dying. The memory palace is a smuggling operation. It takes the thing your brain is weak at and hides it inside the thing your brain cannot stop doing. But here's where you should get suspicious. This is a 2,000-year-old trick from a world with no science. It feels like it works on 5 items. Does it actually hold, or does it collapse the moment you need it for something real? There's a competition you've probably never heard of, the World Memory Championships. People sit in silence and memorize hundreds of random digits in order, a shuffled deck of cards, in minutes, pages of names and faces. The winners are called memory athletes, and the obvious assumption was always that they were born different, wired for it. In 2017, a neuroscientist named Martin Dressler decided to actually check. He took 23 of the best memorizers in the world and put them in a brain scanner. Their brains were normal. Structurally, anatomically, nothing set them apart from anyone else. And every one of them said the same thing. They weren't gifted, they were trained. Almost all of them used the same method, placing what they needed to remember along a journey through a familiar space. The method of Loci. Simonides' trick, alive in a competition hall. But it goes deeper than that, and here's the part that's about you, not them. Dressler took ordinary people, no training, no talent, and taught them the palace. 6 weeks, a little each day. Then he tested them against the champions. The memory athletes recalled 71 of 72 words from a list, the untrained controls around 40. After 6 weeks of training, the ordinary people had leapt up toward the athlete's range, and when he scanned their brains again, the wiring had physically shifted. The connections in their memory networks had begun rearranging themselves to resemble the brains of the world's best memorizers. The study ran in Neuron, one of the field's most serious journals. 4 months later, the gains still held. So this is not a curiosity. An ordinary brain, your brain, can be carried most of the way to a world champion memory in about the length of a single season, using a technique a poet stumbled onto standing in rubble. Which leaves the question this whole story has been walking toward. A technique this powerful, this learnable, that sat at the center of education for 2,000 years, somebody had to lose it for you. The question isn't how the palace works. It's who decided you didn't need one. Nobody decided exactly. It was taken in 3 steps by 3 inventions, each one kinder than the last, and each one costing more than anyone noticed. The first was writing. In a world with almost no books, your memory was the library. Knowledge could only live inside a person, so people built vast interior architecture to hold it. But Plato tells a story of a king offered the gift of writing who refuses to be grateful. This invention, the king says, will produce forgetfulness in the minds that learn it. People will trust the marks on the page and stop carrying knowledge within themselves. They will seem to know much and know nothing. He was right. As writing spread, the need to hold loosened. Why build a palace when you can unroll a scroll? The second step was the printing press. Books went from rare treasures to things you owned by the shelf. Memory, as a trained art, slid from the center of education to the margins and then out the door entirely. And the third step is in your hand right now. Your phone remembers every number, so you remember none. It holds every birthday, every route, every fact you might once have carried. Each time you reach for it instead of your own mind, you make the same trade the king warned about, handing a piece of your memory to something outside you so you never have to build the room that would have held it. This isn't a sermon about putting the phone down. The trade is often worth it. But it has a price, and the price is quiet. A skill every educated person once had, that took weeks to learn and a lifetime to keep, has gone almost completely dark in a single century. Not because we got worse, because we stopped needing to be good. And a thing you never practice is a thing you never have. Your memory isn't failing. It was simply never built. The palace was always there. Nobody handed you the key. Which is the strange, quiet hope underneath all of this. Nothing was taken from you. The machinery Simonides used is the same machinery behind your eyes right now. The part of your mind that maps space, that remembers every home you've ever lived in, that can walk you through your front door this second without one mistake. It never atrophied. It has been running your whole life, holding places effortlessly, waiting for you to notice what else it could hold. You are not a person with a bad memory. You are a person with an untrained one, and one of those you're stuck with. The other you can change in a few weeks, starting tonight. So here's the small experiment. The next thing you need to remember: a list, a name, a handful of facts. Don't write it down. Put it somewhere instead. Hang it on your front door. Set it on your kitchen table. Stand it in your hallway. Build a small room and leave the thing inside. Then walk back in tomorrow and see if it's still there. It will be. It was always going to be. 2,500 years ago, a man walked out of a collapsing room and discovered that the surest place to keep something is not on a page and not in a device, but in a space you can return to. That space is still in you. The lights are still on. You just have to go inside.